Ever find yourself looking back and wondering, why certain big things happened exactly when they did?
Oh, absolutely. Those pivotal moments, the timing can feel so significant or sometimes just baffling.
Exactly. Well, today we're diving into a really interesting astrological technique that tries to shed some light on that timing. It's called Zodiacal Releasing, ZR for short.
Right. And it's maybe not what people immediately think of with astrology. It's less about predicting daily events and more like mapping out chapters in your life story.
Chapters, yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
Based on your birth chart, it highlights these long stretches, periods where certain themes or energies are supposed to be stronger.
precisely.
Yeah.
And it works at different scales, different levels. We call them L1, L2, and L3.
Okay,
Yeah.
levels. So L1 is the biggest picture.
Yeah, L1 gives you the overall climate for maybe a decade, sometimes much longer. Big overarching themes.
And L2,
L2 zooms in. Think of it like the specific season you're in for a couple of years within that larger L1 climate. More detail,
gotcha. And L3 must be even shorter.
much shorter. L3 gets down to, well, not quite day to day, but shorter periods, months sometimes. It's the most specific burst of energy or focus within that L2 season.
Okay, so when we're looking at these L1, L2, L3 periods, what are the astrological building blocks? What creates these themes?
We're primarily looking at the planets, the signs, and the houses from the birth chart.
Right, the familiar players.
Yeah, exactly. Planets represent different drives or functions. Mars for energy and action, Venus for relationships, values, that kind of thing.
Huh.
Then the zodiac signs, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, all 12, they act like filters. They flavor how that planet expresses itself. So Mars in Aries is going to feel very different from Mars in Cancer.
More direct versus maybe more protective, something like that.
You got it. And finally, the houses. Those represent the areas of life, career, home, relationships, finances, where these energies actually play out on stage, so to speak.
Okay, planets, signs, houses, acting out across these different time periods. Now, the sources also mention some specific ZR terms, loosing of the bond. What's that?
Loosing of the bond, or LB. That's a big one. It marks a really significant shift, a major turning point. Think of it like breaking free from something.
Breaking free from old patterns or a situation.
Exactly. Releasing constraints, starting something fundamentally new. It often coincides with major life changes.
Interesting. And what about culminating?
Culminating usually applies to an L2 period. It suggests that the themes of that specific L2 season are reaching a peak, a high point of expression or importance during that time.
Okay. And I saw mention of peak with plus signs sometimes, like plus, plus, plus.
Yeah, the plus signs just indicate the intensity. More pluses mean a stronger, more concentrated focus or energy for that period. So plus, plus, plus is highly significant.
Got it. So this framework gives us timing, themes, intensity, and potential turning points.
Pretty much, yeah.
So our mission today, then, is to apply the ZR lens to the life of someone pretty iconic, Steve Jobs. See if it lines up with some of his major moments.
Exactly. It's a great way to see the technique in action, using a life story many people are familiar with.
Okay, let's kick things off back in 1982. This was when Jobs famously took charge of the Macintosh project. What was happening in his ZR chart then?
All right, so the big picture, the L1 period active at that time, actually started back in late 1977 and ran all the way to mid-1989. That L1 was Jupiter and Sagittarius.
Jupiter and Sagittarius sounds expansive, visionary.
That's the feel, absolutely.
Yeah.
Jupiter's about expansion, belief, big ideas, and Sagittarius is a sign very much associated with vision, aiming high, exploring new frontiers. So that whole decade plus was sort of underscored by this expansive, boundary-pushing energy for him.
Fits the image, definitely. Okay, now let's zoom into L2, the period covering 1982.
Right, the relevant L2 period ran from early 81 to mid-83, and this one was Saturn in Aquarius. It was marked with 2 plus signs, plus plus, so fairly intense.
Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn is structure, hard work. Aquarius is innovation, maybe rebellion.
You nailed it. It's often about bringing innovative ideas, Aquarius, into concrete form through disciplined effort, Saturn, pushing boundaries, but needing structure to do it. The intensity suggests this was a period of significant effort towards that kind of innovation.
Okay, that makes sense for developing the Mac, but then the L3, the really specific period around him taking over in mid-1982.
This is where it gets really potent. The L3 period from June 20th to September 3rd, 1982 was also Saturn, but this time Saturn in Leo. And crucially, it was marked as a loosing of the bond, LB, and a peak intensity period, 3 plus signs, plus, plus, plus.
Wow. Okay, LB and triple peak intensity involving Saturn in Leo. Leo brings that focus on leadership, the self, right?
Exactly. So taking over the Mac project, according to this, wasn't just a step up. The loosing of the bond suggests it was a fundamental break from something prior, a major liberation perhaps from constraints within Apple R&D or other projects.
And the Saturn in Leo part?
It points towards taking charge, taking center stage, Leo, in a structured, perhaps demanding way, Saturn, with intense focus and significance, plus, plus, plus. It frames that moment as a powerful defining shift where he asserted his vision and control.
That really paints a picture of a major turning point, not just a job change. Okay, let's jump forward. His return to Apple in the mid-90s. Apple buys NXT in 96, he comes back. What does ZR say?
Okay, so the L1 backdrop had changed by then. From late 1989 running all the way to 2016, his L1 was Saturn in Capricorn.
Saturn in Capricorn, that sounds serious. Building, structure, long-term plans?
Very much so. It often relates to major restructuring, rebuilding foundations, ambition, and long-term strategy. Considering Apple's struggles then and the massive rebuild he eventually led, that L1 theme feels quite appropriate for that whole era.
Right, the long game. What about the L2 period right around his return, 96, 97?
The L2 from mid-July 96 to mid-March 97 was Venus in Taurus, and again, really highlighted, marked as culminating and a triple peak, plus, plus, plus.
Venus in Taurus? That sounds much nicer than Saturn.
Ah,
Values, beauty, maybe stability, and culminating plus peak intensity.
exactly. Venus in Taurus is about core values, what's tangible, perhaps sensual, and often relates to security, finances, even beauty and design. Its culminating status suggests these themes were peaking.
So his return wasn't just business, it was personal, tied to his values.
ZR suggests it was profoundly significant for him on that level, yes. A return to something he deeply valued.
Yeah.
Apple, his creation, maybe stabilizing things towards like security. The plus, plus, plus intensity underscores just how major this culmination was for him personally and professionally. Maybe even about the value Apple represented to him.
And then there's an L3, summer 97, he's named advisor to the CEO.
Yes, that specific L3, July 6th to August 23rd, 1997, was the Sun in Leo.
Sun in Leo again, just like the Saturn in Leo for the Mac project takeover, stepping into the spotlight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sun in Leo is about radiance, leadership, being central, expressing oneself confidently. Being named advisor, even if not CEO yet, was him stepping back towards the center stage at Apple. So the ZR shows this whole return period as a powerful culmination of values, Venus Taurus, leading directly into him taking a more visible leading role, Sun Leo.
Okay, one more huge one. The iPhone launch in 2007, a game changer. What was the ZR weather like then?
Well, that long L1 of Saturn and Capricorn was still the backdrop, continued rebuilding long-term strategy. But the L2 period, active during the launch preparations and the launch itself, is really interesting.
Which was?
From late December 2006 to early January 2009, the L2 was the moon in Cancer. And significantly, it was marked as a loosing of the bond.
Another LB moon in Cancer that feels different, more emotional, perhaps about home, security, the public.
It can relate to all of those. The moon connects to our feelings, the public, our sense of belonging or nurturing. Cancer is a very protective, sensitive sign, often associated with home, family, roots, but also the collective mood.
So a leasing of the bond in moon in Cancer, how does that relate to launching a phone?
It suggests the iPhone launch wasn't just a tech release. The LB points to it being a fundamental shift, releasing an old way of doing things, maybe an old way of connecting or communicating, to make way for something new that perhaps resonated on a more intuitive or public need level. Moon Cancer.
Like letting go of the old phone paradigm entirely.
Precisely. It frames the iPhone as revolutionary, a break from the past, ushering in a new era, maybe one that tapped into a collective feeling or need, Moon in Cancer, in a powerful way. It wasn't just features, it was a fundamental change.
So looking across these three massive moments, taking over Mac, returning to Apple, launching iPhone, what's the big takeaway from this ZR analysis?
Well, what stands out is how consistently these pivotal events seem to align with these particularly highlighted ZR periods, especially the loosing of the bond markers and the periods with peak intensity, plus, plus, plus.
It gives a kind of underlying rhythm.
Yeah, it suggests a framework where the timing of these huge shifts wasn't random. It's as if these planetary cycles described by ZR were creating windows
Yeah.
like energetic openings or pressure points where these transformations were more likely to happen or could manifest more powerfully.
It makes these events feel less like isolated incidents and more like part of a larger unfolding pattern in his life.
Exactly. It doesn't take away from his agency or genius, of course, but it adds this layer, suggesting these moments were perhaps aligned with or even amplified by these broader cosmic cycles.
It really is a different lens to view a life through, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thinking about the timing of major events, not just as consequences of choices, but maybe also as riding a wave or hitting a specific point in a cycle.
Mhm.
It definitely makes you wonder about your own life or other historical figures. Could you map out those big turning points and see if similar alignments pop up?
It's a fascinating thought experiment for sure. And it leads to that bigger question, doesn't it? Just how much might these larger cycles, these astrological timings, influence the unfolding of our lives and histories? Is there an underlying pattern, a kind of temporal architecture to our journeys that we're only just starting to decipher with tools like ZR?
A temporal architecture. Wow, that's definitely something to chew on. Could these alignments suggest something fundamental about how our stories unfold?
It certainly leaves you pondering the connection between our individual paths and these vast cosmic rhythms.